Hi, welcome to the 6th edition of Blue Talk. Again, John, Dave and myself are going to look back over our victory against Edinburgh in the Pro 12, Connacht's great win against Munster, all the Pro 12 action, and have a good old discussion as well. So boys, 30 points to 23 against Edinburgh. Got a bonus point, got the win.
It was just such a pity we let them in for the bonus point at the end. It really was. It was such a pity.
Yeah, I know it. I know you're saying that with your tongue firmly in your cheek because of the effect it had on Munster, but I think it actually was a bit.
Oh, it was, yeah. Yeah, it was sloppy.
And, job done. All the top three sides got a bonus point win, which wasn't really expected. I wasn't expecting the Scarlets to give up a bonus point win, although they had a touch of the tummy.
To be honest with you, I didn't expect any of the three top sides to pick up a try bonus point because of the opposition they were playing.
Exactly.
You know?
Well, and the fact that we couldn't buy a try for about 4 years.
Yeah.
And then we got them all in the second half.
I thought we were really good in that first half. We played a lot of really good rugby. We just could not convert.
It was a very peculiar kind of game, wasn't it? I mean, it was only 6-3 at half time, and we were under no pressure really. We had oodles of possession, all the territory, and couldn't convert.
Scores. Yeah, I was going in at half time. I was really thought it was not a good place to be, in having all that endeavour. And like you say, we played pretty well in that first half. Didn't get a sniff of a score, and there were times in the second half where we played not half as well, but ended up getting 4 tries and cleaning up. So it was it went through periods of being like boring, where other periods of being really thrilling, and periods when we played shite, and other periods where we were looking like lords.
It was a matter of, I mean, there were...
At the end of the day, we got a bonus point win, and
there were bits...
There were begrudgers.
I mean, to bring it back to the old thing we've used here before, it was a bit like the curate's egg. There were bits that were really good. If we could stitch all those bits together, I mean, you'd be looking at quite a performance. The only problem is sometimes we manage to stitch all the other bits together. But you look at guys through the team who played well. I thought Mick Carney was absolutely excellent. I thought Rhys Ruddock was really, really good. Pepperami, because he's a bit of an animal. I thought Luke Fitzgerald was just a different class to every other back on the pitch. He has issues with his fitness, but when Luke is fit, he's your best player.
And he's very. I heard him actually last week. He was talking about how you get your power through your legs and all this kind of stuff. How you transmit your power through your with your step and all that kind of stuff. And looking at him in front of me, geez, the guy's after getting a pair of Gordon Darcy like legs on him all of a sudden. Not all of a sudden, but he really has bulked up, and especially the legs. So
I think for Luke Fitzgerald will forever be, that willowy teen from the Blackrock Senior Cup team. But I mean, he's over 6 foot tall, and he's a big bloke. I mean, he's a big stocky guy. So.
Sometimes 95 kilos at least, yeah.
Sometimes there's a bit of a retroactive inhibition in terms of how we actually look at him. But I thought he played really, really well. Rob Kearney did okay. McFadden had something that we will discuss McFadden later. But in terms of
committed as always.
We took our chances well, but we coughed up chances too. And that was the sad thing. I mean, their tries, they didn't really have to work all that hard.
We're trying to look a little bit porous, are we now? We've conceded 3 against...
Well, the one thing, I mean, I had a bit of a rant myself when I saw the team and thought, initially I think we thought it was the IRFU deciding to disrespect the competition by denying us our best players, but they all played for the other provinces, so
yeah, I don't think it was.
It's a strategy to rest them.
I think they rested them so that they're coming in now. They've potentially have 4 games in the space of a month. I think they're going to.
Wouldn't you question resting players? Like we had a week off last week, we have a week off next week, and then it's bloody end of the season. Like would you not want guys getting a run together?
You're resting all your guys.
A few combinations.
You're resting all your guys on a risky fixture in preparation for a risky away from home fixture. Where it's going to be hard to win anyway, and without bringing in a bunch of guys who are still introducing themselves to one another.
Meeting in the car park. Yeah.
I don't know. We all have different theories on why those guys were arrested, but the fact of the matter is that they were. It means that we have to integrate them very, very quickly.
Yeah. Well, we've got like Sexton, Ringrose, Easton Asewa,
they have 2 weeks.
Jamie Heaslip, and who else was arrested? O'Connor was on the bench, and
Then there's Moore and O'Brien to come in, possibly.
Jack McGrath. Jack McGrath's the other one.
More played AIL. Came on as a sub
That's right,
for Lansdowne, so
I've seen the photograph again.
might see him on the park as well, which might be a good guy to come back.
Yeah. So it looks like there's a lot. Imagine Cian Healy and Sean O'Brien trotting on at 60 minutes. I know, maybe Healy isn't in the best of form, and they're both still coming back. But just psychologically, seeing those two lads trotting on for the teammates, being, oh yeah, here we go.
Well,
for the opposition.
I watched Ulster against Zebre at the
Didn't see it.
weekend, and the lads from BBC Northern Ireland certainly think that they're going to take on the All Blacks next weekend.
Well, if you
Let's
listen
hope
to
they're playing the All Blacks.
if you listen to the lads from BBC Northern Ireland, they thought that Zebre were better than the All Blacks last weekend. So I don't know. But you look at there's been a lot of talk about Cian Healy's form, and it has been poor. But one thing that has to be said about last weekend's performance was how good our set piece was, which is something he's a member of. Our scrum was good, our line-out was superb. We destroyed their line-out, we really, really did. And our maul.
And we had them all.
Our maul was
For
really,
the
really
second
good.
time in 2 games.
It was actually better this time because it was less, let's throw a load of numbers on it. It was actually a good maul.
Yeah,
A
very
technically good
organised.
maul.
Yeah.
So that's something to look with anticipation towards. And if we're playing Ulster, one area where Ulster are weak in terms of numbers, their first 3 guys are strong in the back row, but after that things begin to get a little bit shaky. So if we've got guys like Sean O'Brien to come on, it makes a big difference. Jordy Murphy, those guys on the bench, it'll make a big difference in the back row.
Well, I think your man Reedy is nearly first choice 7 for them now. He's come on a lot since joining Ulster, but he's still not at the level of a Josh van der Fleer or a Sean O'Brien or So, and like if they deploy Henderson in the second at number 6, they have a good back row. But who's going to come on? You're down to lads like Robbie Dyack, who's
you've got
good solid pro. But
if you look like I said, you've got, if you start Henderson at 6, you start Nick Williams at 8, and we say is Henry not available? Chris Henry.
Henry is available, but he's
But you start those 3 at
not in very good form.
If Ulster start those 3, that's a very fine back row. That's as good as you're going to find. But it's what's below those guys.
Is Roger Wilson injured, do you think?
Well, he's one of the guys who I would consider to be quite below those.
He's gone. He's really
Was it-
not
was
at the races as much
There
as
was
he
a
was.
pretty good interview with Nick Williams on Against the Head last night. I don't know if anyone saw it. It was a really good interview, actually. Yeah, he came across very well. Guy who's really kind of found himself up there. And he doesn't seem to be overly happy leaving, but he seems to be determined to return at some stage. So good luck to him. But hopefully he leaves out and he's silverware.
Yeah. Well,
No offence.
if he's getting silverware, it means we're not. So.
Yeah.
So, like you mentioned, Fergus McFadden, like he had the curate's egg of a game. He got 2 tries. He kind of was found out a little bit for one of their tries. He was drifted in, and then he put in a pretty dangerous tackle just at the end.
I think on the one he drifted in, I think he thought there was somebody behind him, and there wasn't.
Only 5 yards from the sideline.
Yeah, but I think he thought there was somebody covering
There
behind
was
him.
one of their players.
Yeah.
I know it was just a damn poor read. I initially thought that there was a guy inside, that one of their guys
think
was
he
caught between 2.
He was kind of flat-footed, like he
Yeah.
kind of took one step in and he was flat-footed
Yeah.
and he couldn't react to it.
It was just a bad read.
As regards the thing he got cited for, you can really read that anywhere between. Isn't Fergus McFadden brilliant? He was committing himself to that tackle. He went in chest high. The guy was his knee was nearly on the ground when he hit him. So you could say that by the time he hit him, his body was in a different place to when he was charging at him. So you could make all those excuses, or you could just look at it and say, well,
He didn't wrap his arms.
he didn't wrap his arms. He hit him high. It's a straight red card.
I'm sure Luke will be, or Fergus will be making all those excuses to the beak.
I would have expected
And the
yellow.
beak will be saying,
maybe.
I said at the time that it was I thought it was going to be a certain yellow, and I thought he was lucky to avoid red, let alone yellow.
Yeah.
Because it was dangerous and it was.
That's what I thought. The more you look at it, though, it can go either way for you.
Was it malicious? No. Was it intentional? No. But that doesn't matter. That's not. That's irrelevant.
And he seemed to kind of go unconscious. You see the way he hit the ground? His neck bent forward underneath his body, and his head went underneath his body. Now, whether he did that to try and because he knew he hit him hard and he said, I better look injured here.
It's
or
always,
whether he
it's something
was
you don't-
actually unconscious.
it's something
I
you don't
know.
see in sport anymore outside of cartoons. That was the old human torpedo tackle, you know. And fair play to him for giving us some kind of entertainment. But it was, I mean,
He scored two
and the
bloody
thing is,
good
and that's
tries
the
too.
thing that I was just about to say, that those kind of mistakes overshadowed two very good tries. His second try in particular.
He had an awful lot of work to do there.
Yeah.
He kind of got in between two, possibly
Yeah.
three men.
If he had tried to take the guy on the outside, that would have given them in effect an extra defender, because it would have brought the touchline into play.
Mhm.
By stepping in, they couldn't use the touchline to shepherd him out. They had to actually make the tackle, and they couldn't.
Yeah.
I thought the second try was particularly good.
And what about Josh van der Fleer? That
What about
was, that was a pretty nice move as well. He had a bit of work to do.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Good pace actually. To
Yeah.
get,
Show good pace and good strength.
He used,
and awareness as well,
especially
to react to the intercept.
the way he handed off one guy and used his momentum to propel him to the line, and had to fend off the other guy while getting over the line.
But he's a good player. I mean, we scored 4 very nice tries, very well taken tries.
I mean, and as it turns out, we did need that bonus
Yeah.
point because
But just to
Because
go
everyone
back
else
to
got
Ferguson,
one.
just to go back to
One
Ferguson,
for everyone in the
people,
audience.
you'll hear a lot of people say Fergus McFadden wouldn't get a game on the wing for a top European team, right? And I'd suggest, well, if you look back at the last 7 years, Fergus McFadden has got a lot of games on the wing for a top European team. They're called Leinster.
Yeah. And you know, Joe Schmidt, he's a favourite of the Joe
Yeah.
Schmidts. He's brought him into the Ireland team all the time, and I reckon it's because he's such a committed player.
Mhm.
It gives 110% every time he goes on the pitch. What he, the less, it's a bit like Ronan O'Gara. The less skill you think in your head the guy has, the more impressive a player that makes him. Because it's a kind of it's a circle there.
Yeah.
I happen to think he is quite a skillful player,
Same
but
here.
he's got a serious commitment, and you can't buy that shit.
I'd be a huge fan of Fergus McFadden. Huge. Make no bones about it.
one thing that I was struck at when I was at the match was, again, it's another poor crowd. Like the official
Yeah.
attendance was
Mm.
10,200, and well, probably it looked about right as regards the number of people to the turnstile. But I mean, that's almost a half full house or half empty
it's
house.
poor. I mean, one of the things that was said about O'Connor, if we stuck with O'Connor, it would affect attendances. But O'Connor's gone, the attendances have dropped. And it comes down to one thing and one thing only. People judge whether a team is worth watching by how they're doing in Europe. And we had a poor year in Europe, so we're going to have a poor year at the turnstiles. It's as simple as that, I think. We have a good season in Europe next year. We'll have a good year at the turn time.
These matches always seem to be just sort of the
Yeah,
last
no,
few
that's
towards
true.
the end of the
Yeah.
season. I remember going back now. It's back to the 09 season when we were in the European Cup final for the first time.
Mhm.
A couple of weeks before that final, there was
Against Ospreys, I think.
It
wasn't it?
might have been, I can't remember, but it was very poor attendance. And I thought, God, these people, are trying to scrape money together or whatever, trying to get over to Edinburgh or whatever. But but I mean, maybe there's other things on around this time.
No, I remember we had a Pro 12 semi-final. I think it was against Ulster, and it was 15,000 people in the ground.
Mm.
We had a couple against Munster as well that were not that well attended.
Sometimes attendance can fall off a cliff at the end of a season in the build up
But
to
to
stuff.
drop down
There's
to
nothing build
10,
up to.
to drop
It's a
down
huge
to
drop,
10,000,
yeah.
that's a big drop.
I've been saying it for years. I'm not sure the Leinster marketing team are as sharp as they have been in past years. Maybe they're just a bit too
Laurel Restying.
complacent, and they need to do something to shake themselves up. But I'm sure they will. I mean, those kind of numbers. Mick Dawson will stand for those kind of numbers.
Mm.
I mean, you look at it. We're top of the Pro 12. We're the
Yeah.
best team in Ireland. Maria, those numbers are very poor.
There's a certain city of 75,000 souls on the western seaboard that might be disagreeing with you there, Dave, about us being the best team in
Table doesn't
Ireland.
lie.
Well, they're equal with us on the table and they're playing very attractive rugby. I tell you, I wouldn't be going touting us as the best team in Ireland while they're still,
I'm not, but
while
I'm
they're
just
still
saying,
breathing.
the league table says we're the best team in Ireland. It's as simple as that. I mean, you can
Yeah.
argue all you want.
Well, I'm just talking
And I
about talking about that Munster comic match.
Oh, sorry, I have to get my grin ready.
Well, at 14-6 to Munster, I thought they were
Looking a
going.
little bit
I thought that Munster were going to crush them. They got
Munster-
two fairly handy enough tries.
Munster had a tactic, and I'm pretty sure it was a tactic. Well, I hope it was. Otherwise, Munster were quite prepared to concede in threes, in the belief that they would be able to score in sevens. If you look at how
How does
Munster
that
played,
work out?
well, that's what I'm saying. If you look at how Munster played for that first half hour, they were quite happy to concede penalties, because they thought that they would get up the other end when they had a chance. They'd be able to take them. The problem with that tactic, and the problem that was, unless you're really, really good at it, you're going to annoy the referee, and Munster annoyed the referee, which meant that they not only could they had yellow cards, so not only could they score, could they not get up the chance to field to score in 7, they couldn't keep 15 on the park. And Connacht are the kind of team that if they, I think they made a mistake against Grenoble. I've said it before. They took their foot off the throat against Grenoble. They didn't do it against Munster.
No. And it was great to see them bounce back.
Yeah.
But the thing
With
is,
that
like,
game.
what you think
But that's a
about,
learning experience. Yeah.
Absolutely.
like, Munster pretty much had a full set of players for 35 minutes of the second half, and they actually looked like a rabble.
Mhm.
They couldn't string more than 4 passes together.
The heads went
Is
down.
Andrew Farrell the Munster consultant coach at the moment? He
No.
is, isn't he?
No, I don't think so. I think he had a bit of a
No.
consult.
Is
and
he,
then
is he
went
finished?
off again.
Finished now.
Is he finished now? All right, okay, that's okay. Because otherwise, he would worry about Ireland. But no, if he's not, if he's gone, he's gone. That's
Yeah,
fine by me.
he's gone. But my point being that Munster had 35 players, 35 minutes of a full complement of players.
They could have had 35 players to still win one.
Well, I mean, if you just look at the way that the two teams played, like one team had a game plan, they stuck to it, and they felt totally confident implementing that game plan. Like,
Back their skills again.
but they just look so comfortable on the ball, like, and they try and get. They've got 2 guys who are sensationally quick, and they try and get them to the ball in space.
Look,
at,
I think
at every opportunity.
all the talk about Matt Darcy, right?
You keep calling him Matt Darcy.
Why do I keep calling him Matt Darcy?
I've no
Because
idea.
Matt Darcy wasn't he a scrum half? He used to play for
Scrum
Leinster.
half.
Matt Healy, who was also a scrum half originally, so maybe that's why. Anyway, Matt Healy. But the guy, Ní Adekaloun, he is superb. I think he's the most improved rugby player in Ireland this season.
Faux show. Yeah,
You know?
because he was a bit ropey defensively last
Yeah.
year, maybe, but not anymore.
No,
But he was only coming from AIL club
Yeah.
rugby.
Trinity
and-
College or somewhere.
Yeah, like I mean, so he had a steep learning curve
Yeah.
to come up.
when he learnt it.
He did.
He climbed it. And the thing is, I mean, people are talking about, oh, will Healy be a shooter for South Africa? He mightn't be the only one,
Mm.
you know?
Well, there's 2 words there, and we said it last week. We were talking about their process, the process that they have, and backing that process. They backed it again, and they went back to basics, and they just I suppose the other side of it is the team spirit that they have, the way they've drilled so hard together, and they've done all the stuff. They've, that is carrying them over the line. And as long as it's like the old we used to say about Joe Schmidt. He tells the players, if you do X, you do Y, and you do Z, you'll score a try. Pat Lam has them in a similar frame of mind, and once they see it happen a few times, they start to believe that they're going to score a try every time they
I
get
will
the
say
ball.
there was an evolution, even in the space of the match between Grenoble and that. For example, when Munster were coming up hard, did you notice that Connacht a couple of times, Bundyaki, obviously O'Leary, Henshaw, put little dribbly kicks through, just to turn the Munster defence. They weren't doing that before, but that's something else they're adding. So there's an evolution which I think is important.
You mentioned O'Leary there. I was delighted to see that, and it goes back to team spirit. Munster jettisoned Keighley. They had obviously issues with the guy who went to Northampton. They got rid of him. They jettisoned, I said, Keighley when he had a number of poor games. Your man O'Leary had a bit of a shocker towards the second half of that match in Grenoble when an out half should probably have decided just to kick the ball off the park a couple of times and get your forwards going forward. But they stuck with him in this game, especially when Jack Carty was back.
Maybe Jack Carty wasn't quite fully fit.
Well, came
I'll
on.
tell you
He came on,
one thing that sums up what you're saying and sums up the difference between how the state of mind in the players and the organisation between Connacht and Munster. Connacht had a penalty about 15 in, about 10 metres inside the Munster half, and O'Leary went to kick for the 5, and it went long and it went dead. Maybe 7 or 8 minutes later he had another penalty in virtually the exact same place, and he banged it onto the 5 precisely. So that shows that A, he knows that if he's doing the right things he won't be blamed, and B, he's going to keep doing the right things. Now, in the second half, about 15 minutes left, from almost the exact same position, Keighley had a penalty. Went almost the exact same place. He kicked it and it went dead. And I swear to God, you would have needed Samson and Delilah up in Belfast to lift the guy's chin out of his chest. His head went down so far.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and there's obviously a sense of impending doom around either him or the coaching, whatever, which isn't there in Connacht. Connacht, the coach is obviously supporting his guys.
But it's also they're on the crest of a wave, whereas Munster are in the
Yeah,
dog.
but
Especially
you can put guys up on the wave.
Keith's
Oh yeah, but you can put if you're on the wave, you have to stay there. You have to keep your balance.
Of
And
course.
the coach is part of the reason why you to keep your balance. I mean, if O'Leary, if they were in an environment where making mistakes were harshly punished, would he have tried that second kick from an identical spot? He would have tried something different. He would have been more conservative in his kick. But he wasn't. He went bang straight for the corner again, and he succeeded.
And he got it. It was a very interesting conversation. I don't know if you both heard it on News Talk the other day with Jackman and Damien Varley, and they were discussing how Pat Lam got these guys, and most of them are very young, and that he could install his version of rugby in them very, very easily because they were, they didn't have any attitude, they didn't have
No bad habits.
Whereas Munster, Rob Penny tried the same game pretty much with Munster a few years ago, and because they had been a winning team with a different style of rugby, they just didn't buy into it as the Connacht lads did, because the Connacht lads were much more of a blank canvas, and they didn't have any attitude. And I'm not trying to criticise Munster. I mean, you win shit, you're going to have an attitude.
You earn that attitude.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but
I wonder
I just thought it was very interesting that
how if Rob Penny were back, Munster have a decent enough crop of younger players. I wonder how Rob Penny would succeed with them now.
Yeah, if he hadn't signed a 3-year contract in Japan.
Yeah, well, I don't think he's ever going to come back to Munster. I mean, he was woefully mistreated there. I mean, he really, really was.
Well, I wasn't there. I wasn't at the meetings, but yeah, I was at one actually. I was at.
You were at a meeting actually, yeah.
Jesus, he got roasted. It was the night before the Harlequins game over in England. He got roasted by the supporters club, and they were not a bit happy with the guy. I couldn't believe the kind of.
But for years, Donald Callan was told, don't catch the ball, don't touch the ball, that's not your job, and all of a sudden he's out on the wing getting the ball, you know what I mean, specifically
there's a perfect example, a guy of Donegal Callan's age being taught new tricks.
There's an element of, I remember Will Greenwood's father, Dick Greenwood, got into an awful lot of trouble for a comment that was misquoted actually, because Brian Ashton was going to get Ireland to play a completely new style of rugby, and Dick Greenwood was England coach at the time, or he was head coach at the time, and he said, well, Brian Ashton's after saying this, and he said, you can't give an entire nation a brain transplant.
And that was Mick Doyle.
Was it Mick Doyle?
Mick Doyle in 85.
Sorry, in 85. And Greenwood, what he meant was you can't change the rugby habits of an entire rugby nation. It was misquoted that you can't give a nation a brain transplant. But, I mean, to a certain extent that's true, because those guys were set in their ways, they've been successful. But there's younger players, there are younger players there now. And talented younger players, but the question is, are they going to get ruined? That's the problem. Are they going to get let go?
Yeah.
But the Munster players, the older players refused to implement it on the pitch, and then you had Foley and his buddy Keith Wood off the pitch, constantly undermining Penny and chopping him down at every opportunity.
But you also had an attitude in Munster. I mean, there's always, you often heard, I mean, they make no bones about it. Paul O'Connell, Ronan O'Gara often said it, that the fella who had the jersey before them, they had to rip it off his back. So they weren't going to hand it over to some young fella without him ripping it off their backs. It doesn't seem like the most collegiate of environments.
Yeah. But just going back to Connacht for a little bit, they needed that result. Because considering they lost their last 2 matches, this time last year they kind of imploded. They were 6th in the league, but they lost, I think it was 5 of their last 6 league games. So they ended up not qualifying for Europe on the back of those last couple of months of the Pro 12 season, and I'm sure they didn't want history to repeat itself this year. So they had to win that game. Like when we were kind of discussing this game last week. On the preview, we were saying, Munster must have the more pressing need to win this game. But in fact, Connacht also had this need.
Well, yeah, Munster probably had the more pressing external need, shall we say. I think Connacht are guaranteed European rugby now at this
They are,
stage.
Oh yeah.
And were before
Guaranteed
that.
top four, never mind European.
So the Munster had the most pressing external need, but Connacht's need was internal and obviously greater
One thing,
Yeah.
because it looked it. I mean,
one thing that struck me.
one thing I said it on Twitter, and it got a certain amount of attention. Is I've seen good Munster teams and I've seen bad Munster teams, but I've never seen a Munster team until last week that really didn't look like it gave a shit.
Yeah.
And that was. I mean, that's the first time I've ever seen that.
It's happened a few times in recent.
But I can remember, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, playing
San Francais.
Leinster playing
Possibly,
in
yeah.
Leinster playing in semi-finals, quarter-finals of European competitions on the same weekend as Munster did. Both teams may have lost, but Munster went down fighting. Like I can remember, Munster were beaten by Toulouse in maybe a quarter-final or a semi-final. It's going back to the early noughties. Whereas whoever we played, we just went down in a damn. We played Leicester and went down without barely even registering a punch. Whereas
Road.
no, it was before that,
Before
maybe
that,
02.
Yeah, I know the game.
But we, and the point being though that Leinster just seemed to give up, or the perception was that we gave up. We didn't even register a punch. Whereas Munster, they mightn't have been the most talented individuals, but my God, they fought for each other.
But that was always something that Matt Williams in particular was very, very exercised about, was that to a certain extent, now you could argue that there was a level of accuracy in it, but there was also a level of inaccuracy in that Munster's defeats were always heroic, Leinster's defeats were always shameful. That was the narrative.
The kind of rugby we played.
And sometimes our defeats were shameful, but sometimes they weren't. And sometimes Munster's defeats were heroic, but sometimes they weren't. But the narrative was set in stone.
Of course.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking back to those early days. Like they were narrowly beaten in a Heineken Cup final by Northampton. The following year, they had a dubious try disallowed against Stade Francais in the semi-final. They were beaten well the following year in the final by Leicester. I think 03 then, they were beaten by a very strong Toulouse team who went on to win it. Whereas if you think, whereas if you think about say Leinster's results in those particular seasons, like as the Leicester match in Welford Road I mentioned, we hardly turned up. Nathan Spooner was on one leg and looked at the team just did not function that day. When we got to a semi-final against Perpignan, we were abysmal. 2 years later, in 05, we played Leicester, as you mentioned, John. We were again abysmal that day. Now I know there was a lot of politics going on in the background, but just a team that didn't look like a team ended up on the pitch that day and nearly embarrassed themselves. But just as Leinster were trying to build momentum with the crowds they were getting through the turnstile, the interest within the province, they nearly shot themselves in the foot, because they just didn't back up their the level of interest within the game. Even in the 06 semi-final against Munster, there was
after coming from
but billed as the biggest,
one of the best games we ever played.
Biggest, and most, there was tickets changing hands for astronomical sums. There was a huge interest in it within the country, and we didn't turn up that day. And it probably galvanised us as a team and as a fan base, but the team let itself down that day.
But that, to a certain extent, is Munster's problem. Their legacy weighs heavy on them.
Yeah, for sure.
They live on that legacy a lot more than other teams do. They seem to...
It's like if your dad is Mike Tyson or your dad is John Lennon, or you know what I mean? What do you do? Where do you go from there?
It's always too late for goodbye. The problem is that they haven't moved on from those days. I don't think they have. Either on or off the pitch, either within or without the organisation.
Isn't there an awful lot of entitlement? I listened to it again and I listened to...
Did you watch Against the Head?
I did, and it was like they were entitled to be in a
I've
European
never
Cup
seen
semi-final.
anything more biased than BBC Northern Ireland's Ulster rugby coverage until last night.
I have to go and watch that now.
It was dreadful. But that's the thing. You see, the thing is, and to a certain extent, while they had a good team, it was a good attitude to have. That Munster were never beaten, that they were always done down by a referee or by some form of perfidy, whether it was Neil Back's hand of back or...
We're better when we're bitter.
Yeah. But the thing is, it's easy to be better when you're bitter,
When you have the players that are tough as nails.
A 1 through 10 international pack. A 1 through 10 that you could almost argue were Lions standard pack, right?
Mm-hmm.
They don't have that anymore. So being bitter just means that you're bitter. It doesn't mean that you're better. And the thing is, they haven't moved on from that era. And there's a lesson to a certain extent for Connacht, because one thing I did notice was Pat Lam was talking about a legacy, and in terms of a stadium, Jesus don't. If you want to know, should you build a stadium, take a look at Munster.
Exactly. I think they probably just need to improve the facilities there rather than go and build grand.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, what you have to do is you have to kind of keep your eyes on the ball. I think eyes were taken off the ball in Munster, and it's very hard to get them back on it.
Is it possible to get more people in, or more, build another stand or two?
There's a huge amount of space there. Huge amount. I mean,
That's all you need to do.
You can do an awful lot there. The big problem is that the land itself is owned by a trust, and it's leased to Bordnagon, or whoever Bordnagon are these days, for 99 years. Now, there's people talk about the running of a dog. I don't know if that's true or urban myth. Even if it is, even if it's not. The question is, how do you build a stadium and a dog track?
Candlestick Park.
Yeah.
Had a retractable stand.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean that's why. But the thing is, you see it that way. You see the difference that the Clan Terrace has made in terms of sealing in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
It's hermetically, as it were. It's made a huge difference. It's a proper hostile ground. That befits the most westerny ground in the competition. Indeed in European competition, it should be unique and it should be special, and it is unique and it is special. The thing is, how do you make that a more permanent thing? And like Pat Lam says, he's talking about a legacy. You want a legacy that's going to.
Legacy's getting a few trophies in your cabinet
A
before.
legacy is using the money that you're going to waste in a stadium on an academy. In my opinion, the academy comes first.
Yeah.
Well, it's a rugby club, not a municipal stadium owner. One thing that I noticed, right? Who are the two best teams in at the moment in form? Would you say
In the Pro
in
12.
the Pro 12?
Glasgow and Connacht.
Glasgow and Connacht,
There's
right?
any question about that.
And they're probably the two teams whose home ground is in the worst climate. You got the west coast of Ireland and most northerly part of Scotland. Therefore, they're affected by poor weather and so on. Yet they play a very attractive running type of rugby. And
Bizarre, isn't it?
for the whenever we talk about the Six
And
Nations,
Toulon are on the south coast of France, and they play a dreadfully dour type of rugby.
but we have
Too much money.
we've heard this guff for the last number of years. Oh well, Northern Hemisphere rugby is dictated by the climate that we play in, whereas the reality is that that's rubbish, because it's an attitude of the way the team wants to play and their attitude of the coach that he wants to implement within the team.
The other side, I agree with you, because New Zealand never stops raining,
Exactly.
and look how they play. On the other hand, in Australia, it never rains. It never rains, and they can't play when it's even too
When it
warm
does
and the
rain.
ball gets sweaty. But yeah, it's about the attitude of the coaches.
In
I agree
Australia
entirely.
in '99, their particular coach, when in that World Cup in '99, said, "I don't want you kicking the ball," and they didn't kick it. They actually went through an international against Wales, in the Millennium Stadium, without kicking the ball in the entire match. Can you imagine an international like that?
Yeah.
Like, that is an attitude and a mindset. And that's
Waratahs were like that when they won the. Yeah, they were a ball in hand team as well. The weather has something to do with it. It's just overstated. Is the problem. Like, it's a team like Connacht or Glasgow. It's easier to counter that kind of rugby in bad weather. That's all. It doesn't mean you can't play it.
You look at Ireland.
Just
Ireland
means it's easier to spoil.
90% of the Irish young people play ball handling games. As their main game. Whether it's Gaelic football, whether it's rugby, whether it's hurling,
Pocket billiards.
whether it's Gaelic football, rugby, hurling, or even indoor sport like basketball, netball, although they would really, because the rain doesn't affect those. We take those first three, right? So the idea of handling a ball in poor conditions and not dropping it and being comfortable with it, it's something that actually it should be fairly innate to us.
Yeah, but it's an egg-shaped ball, Dave. Come on.
Nah, doesn't make any difference. Ball's ball.
yeah. I do
You
just-
should only ever be touching with your fingertips.
But I just think that we use it as an excuse. Oh, there's poor weather conditions. Oh, the ball was like a bar soap. We just kicked the leather off it, and that's acceptable. It shouldn't be acceptable, because at the end of the day, it should be put. Look at the interest that Connacht are after generating.
Yeah.
Compared to say Munster, and look at the dour rubbish that they play. And look at they have a stadium that holds 26,000 people. They haven't had 26,000 people in it probably for, I don't know.
Since it was built, maybe.
I know they have at the start, but since
But on the other hand,
results have
the other side of that,
started
and I agree with you, but the other side of that is Munster played dreadfully dour rugby and won 2 European Cups, and people were following them like the Piper Ham.
That's if you win. Look at Ireland in the international team. We played rubbish rugby for 2 seasons, kicking the ball in the air and chasing after it. Now people like it. People want to go and support Ireland and rah, aren't we great? But once the tide turns and we lost a few games,
So the knives came out.
But personally, I don't find that Irish team to be attractive to watch. I'd support them because they're Irish and that's where I'm from. But I think it's awful dire rubbish.
We can't all have that Corinthian crowbar spirit, Jay. But I agree with you. I mean, if you're trying to attract people into the game, Connacht are in the vanguard. Connacht are the advanced force.
For show.
They have to be, not they have to be, but it's great that they are playing the game the way they're playing, because that is, the game when played like that is going to get people in, and then
Back to the entertainment business again,
But the great thing about rugby is that there are loads of different ways to play the game, even within the space of one game. There are loads, and that's the depth of rugby. That's the richness of the game.
Well, that's what Connacht are learning. You said it yourself. They're putting in the odd grubber now, and they're and they have. I think we said it last week. They have the pack to do the tough stuff, which maybe teams who play running rugby a lot don't always have. They've got the goods there to vary the thing up. They've got the heroic defence. They've got they have all the tools there, and they're bringing in a guy from South Africa next year who's a bit of a kicking 10.
Yeah.
Who if he can take over the scoreboard and they can do all the rest of the fancy stuff.
The other side of it is, I mean, if you mix it, if you think back to the second half of the Highland Cup final 2011, when for the first 10 to 15 minutes, until we'd taken the lead in the penalty, Leinster, it was crazy. I don't mean crazy as in without thought, but it was absolutely insane stuff going on. There was running, and then when they kick off from after us going ahead from the penalty, what does Johnny do? He takes the ball and he bangs it 65 metres downfield for touch. Because sometimes you have to take a breath. And that's the beauty of rugby, that's the richness of the game, that there are all these different ways to play it. And Connacht, as we said, are discovering that Pat Lam is introducing these different nuances to the game, to the Connacht game. And that'll make them a stronger team. That's what... If Connacht kept playing the way they played against Grenoble, I wouldn't worry about them. Right? What worries me about Connacht is that they're not.
Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll meet them in the
Because
final.
a team that to be a team that learns and improves, you have to be an intelligent team. An intelligent team is more and more frightening than a big team.
Yeah.
Well,
and you've seen them, you just said the beauty of rugby. Beauty of rugby is some days the big orcs come and run all over the little small guys, and some days the little small guys run around the big orcs and make them look foolish. So there's room for everyone.
So Connacht have qualified now, but so going forward, they've lost Henshaw. Now I suppose what they've got to do is try and hold
They've
on.
retained Heenan though.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
But they also need to
keep
keep the likes of Bundy Aki. I know he's another year left. Marmion, I know he signed another deal.
Yeah.
Delan, of course,
It'll
but
be
they've
interesting
lost
all these guys.
They've lost
from all over
apparently
the
there's
place.
7 guys been released. They've one, and I think the one that they're going to miss the most there is Alan Muldowney.
Yeah.
He's going to Grenoble, but he's an enforcer
He's
within
a
their team.
kingpin in their
Yeah,
team.
he
He's
played
big
very,
time.
very well. But
He can do everything though. He
I
can carry the
think
ball.
the two they have to worry most about, if they're going to worry about any of them particularly, are Bundy Aki and Ultan Delan.
Yeah.
The call of home for Delan, I mean, I'm sure it's strong. He grew up watching that Munster team. He grew up watching guys in his position in that Munster team who I'm sure he idolised. He has the opportunity to take that jersey. That's going to be a draw. Whether he succumbs to it or not, I don't know. I'm not saying he will or he won't or whatever. And I think the other guy that's going to be targeted, I think Munster are going to target Bundy Aki. I genuinely believe
I
it.
think lots of people are going
I think
to
lots of
target
people.
him.
I think even New Zealand might target him, but I think Munster are going to target him because they love it. They love that kind of player. They always, if you look at Munster,
Absolutely,
they
yeah.
always sign that guy,
And
and he's
Maffey.
Yeah, but he's better than all of them, with the exception maybe Topoki was superb. But Aki is better than Maffey. He's better than Tuti Pupu. He's better than Lala or whatever Lala, and he's better than the feckin' Egypt they have there at the moment. Saili, right? And he'll be Irish qualified.
Yeah. Oh, what's not to like?
That's a turnip wet dream.
What's not to like?
Well, he's got to get capped next summer.
Oh God, yeah.
They have to.
Oh, yeah.
They have to arrange an international.
I would have an international arranged for 1 minute past his 3 years.
Definitely.
Right? And I'd cap that. But a sevens international. It doesn't matter what.
But isn't that part of the beauty?
That's the one time I would yield my hatred of sevens.
Isn't that part of the beauty of a guy like Bundy Aki, the way he's bought into Connacht? I mean, he's die for them. Like he's just.
He looks great. Actually, one thing I had to say, we were talking about earlier about Ben Teal. His attitude ever since A, since he arrived, and B, since he signed for Worcester, his attitude has not taken a backward step. It's been top class.
No, he's great. Yeah. And I thought he looked better at 13.
You see, some guys when they have a deal coming up, they look like they're a bit on the, maybe not consciously, but they look like they're on the plane already. You can't say that for Ben Teal.
No.
But anyway, back to Aki. Aki has been superb. I mean, he really was. I mean, people talked about him and Clark being the big captures.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out for Clark, but he has repaid that investment in spades. Really has.
He has. And so obviously there's one side goes up, Connacht goes up, but the downside is for Munster, like they are going to be under, like they're 7th at the moment. They have it kind of still in their hand. They play Edinburgh and Scarlets, but supposing that they don't qualify for Europe, they're going to struggle to.
It's an appalling vista, Jason.
But isn't it like they are going to struggle to recruit? They're going to struggle to hold on to some of their internationals, and then they're going to have the knock-on effect of obviously crowds through the turnstile, the knock-on then of the financials coming in the door, trying to market their club.
It's fun to laugh at Munster, but after a while the laughter has to stop, and you have to look at the bottom line. And the bottom line is that Munster are an integral part of Irish rugby.
Absolutely.
Irish rugby exists.
We won 4 provinces in the big cup
Irish
next
rugby
year.
exists in a market that's too big for it because of the way it centrally plans amongst all 4 provinces. You take one of them out of it, we're in trouble. I mean, people might say, oh well, how does that affect Leinster? Well, if the IRFU have to cover costs, have to cover revenue that would normally be earned in a European run, where's that revenue going to come from? You know, it comes from the rest of us.
Comes from all of our pockets.
Enjoyable and all as it is to watch Munster tripping over their own shoelaces.
Well, I don't actually enjoy it, to be honest, but there you
To
go.
watch
We
Munster
all get our kicks in different ways, Dave.
Enjoyable as it may be to watch Munster tripping over their own shoelaces, when they fall, they take our wallet with them. And that's something that we all have to bear in mind. So what I'm saying, the point I'm making is it doesn't do well to laugh too long.
I'm laughing at your analogy there. I think it's a good one. It's funny.
Yeah, like so it's obviously it's imperative that they win their next game against Edinburgh.
That's the big one for them.
Yeah.
I mean, Edinburgh are their biggest rivals.
That's the shootout. That's almost like a mini Pro 12 final before the final.
And Cardiff have to play Edinburgh in the last game, so they're the 3 teams: Munster, Cardiff, and Edinburgh that can possibly get 6th place. Ospreys are too far back, and I think Ulster and Scarlets are going to be 4th and 5th in whatever order. So one of those or 2 of those teams are going to miss out on Europe, and you know
And one game, and actually, one game is going to probably have a big consequence on who we end up playing. Is Glasgow play Connacht on the last day?
Well, don't forget the Judgment Day as well has to come up.
Yeah,
that's a huge thing as well.
Yeah,
I mean, that Cardiff Ospreys game is in the Millennium Stadium. It's with all the hoo-ha and rula bula around that, you know, so that's going to be I mean, that adds another string to that kind of
the Ospreys could do Munster a favour there, big time.
Did you ever think you'd see the day that Munster fans would be cheering on Ospreys? I mean, they don't like us, they hate them.
I think they hate us more, mate.
No, they don't, they hate Ospreys more, no question about it.
Well boys, thanks man, and thanks very much for watching. Cheers.